Hello and welcome to our podcast where we are going to be talking about LLMs as website analytics tools, specifically the do's and the don'ts of using AI tools to evaluate your website. Hello and welcome. My name is Robert DeGeorge. I'm the Director of Product Consulting here at Dealer.com. Been in the automotive industry for 15 plus years, both on the dealership side and the vendor side. I specialize in talking with dealers on a day-to-day basis about their digital presence and how AI can help them be more effective in their market. And I'm joined by my colleague and partner, Jeremy Marshall. Jeremy, why don't you go ahead and introduce yourself?
Hey everybody, I'm Jeremy Marshall. I'm a senior product consultant here with Dealer.com. I work alongside Rob DeGeorge to provide product information for our dealers that are interested in checking out more of the Cox Automotive suite.
And we're super excited here. Jeremy, I got to start off our questions with, AI tools like ChatGPT, Gemini, Claude. They've become increasingly popular. And dealers today, they're using them to evaluate things like website performance, compare themselves to competitors, and even use them to make marketing decisions. But the question I got to ask you, Jeremy, is should they?
It's a great question. And I would say it mainly depends on what you're asking and what sort of data you have access to. So I think today we'll go ahead and cover what AI does well, where it falls short, how to identify misinformation, and some practical ways that dealers can use large language models without being misled.
What exactly, Jeremy, is a large language model?
So a large language model, or an LLM, is essentially a prediction engine. It's trained on massive amounts of text. It's extremely good at understanding language, summarizing information, identifying patterns, and just generating content. The important thing to understand is it's not an analytics platform. We don't want it to replace things like Google Analytics or GA4. We don't want it to, be a crawler for your website to determine performance metrics. It's not going to replace an SEO platform. It's not pulling server log files or anything like that. Instead, it helps interpret information that you provide to it. This means that the AI tools, they need reliable data to return reliable responses. And that means your website needs to have data ready and available for many different types of LLMs.
So if I ask ChatGPT, how healthy is my dealership website? What happens?
It's just going to try and give you an answer. Every single time it'll try its best to return an answer. Very seldom will you be able to get it to say, well, I just really don't know, unless you've challenged it in the past. So the problem is that most of the time, it doesn't have access to things like your website analytics, your traffic data, your conversion data, your crawl data, or like I said before, your server logs. So what you're often getting is an educated opinion. It's not an actual measurement. And this educated opinion is based on any number of sources. Some could be correct, some could be incorrect. Also, if your data source is using out-of-date information, then you're going to receive an incorrect response to your question or prompt. Keep in mind that each person using an LLM may receive a different response, and you could potentially receive a different response each time you enter the same prompt. For example, if you go and ask, how healthy is my website 10 times? You're going to get 10 different answers from 10 different sources. So I think this is one of the biggest misconceptions that dealers have today. What are some common myths that you've been hearing? What do you think dealers believe about AI website analysis?
Yeah, so Jeremy, that's a great question. In my mind, there's really three big myths, okay? And the first one is if AI sounds confident, it must be correct. And that's just not true. The reality is that AI can sound extremely convincing while being completely wrong. I would say myth number two is going to be that AI can perform a technical website audit. A lot of dealers that I talk to think that, and that's simply not true. Okay. The reality here is that AI is not crawling your entire website. It's not reviewing your server logs or measuring actual performance data. AI simply wasn't designed for that. And then I would say that myth number three is that AI is a replacement for analytics platforms. And the reality is that analytics tools measure reality, whereas AI simply generates explanations. And those are two totally different things. Now, let's segue over into talking a little bit about how AI can demonstrate conflicting results. This is something that you and I have seen in practice multiple times. And so I got to ask you, Jeremy, like one of the most eye-opening things that I've seen is when two separate AI sessions produce two completely different answers. And I got to ask you, Jeremy, like, why does this happen?
Yeah, absolutely. And I've experienced this myself. And it's really because the LLMs generate probabilistic responses. They're predicting the most likely answer based on patterns they've seen previously. So here's what I do. Ask it the same question. Do it from a different account in an incognito window, or even do that on a different day. And you can often get dramatically different results.
Interesting. So could you give dealers a simple demonstration that they could try themselves?
Sure. Yeah. Go ahead and try this at home. So go into ChatGPT and ask it which dealership in your hometown offers the best shopping experience. Run that same prompt in ChatGPT, Claude, Gemini, and you're likely going to receive 3 different answers. And then now ask it why it reached that conclusion. And you'll quickly realize that many of the recommendations aren't based on consistent measurements. And that's a valuable lesson, right? AI generates narratives. It's not necessarily providing evidence 100% of the time. What would you say if a dealer already has an AI generated answer about their website in their hand, and maybe they ran it themselves, or maybe a vendor gave it to them? What do you think the responsible next step looks like?
Great question. So I would say you want to treat it like an unverified claim and then do one of 4 things, okay? None of which will happen inside of the AI tool. Now, for step 1, you're going to want to go back to the system of record. Every real number about your website, Jeremy, it already lives somewhere, whether it's Google Analytics 4, Search Console, your CRM, your website provider's reporting, your call tracking. That's where the answer starts, okay? And if a number can't be traced back to a platform that actually measures, then it isn't a measurement. It's a sentence that simply contains a number. I would say for step 2, you're going to want to match every claim to a report that you can actually pull. For each statement, for example, traffic is down, conversion is weak, your competitor ranks better, pull the report, okay? Note the date range and see whether the two agree or not. You're going to find one of 3 things. Either 1, it matches, 2, it doesn't match, or there's simply no report that even measures what was claimed, okay? And that third one is oftentimes the most common in what I found, and I think you found as well. And it's oftentimes the most important one to catch, okay? Now, for step 3, you're going to want to put it in front of the person who owns the outcome. All right. Your performance manager, for example, your SEO specialist, your website provider, they have the context, Jeremy, that no tool has. They know what changed last month on your site. They know whether your inventory broke. They know how your market has moved. They also know what's seasonal and what's actually a real problem. And a simple 5-minute conversation with someone who knows your store, that's going to resolve more than another round of questions in a new AI chat window, okay? For step 4, you're going to want to weigh it against the decision costs. And what I mean by that is like ask yourself, what would I actually do differently because of this? And if your answer touches your ad budget, your URL structure, your merchandising, your vendor relationships, for example, then the bar is verified data reviewed by a human, not a narrative. And if you can't verify it, Jeremy, don't act on it, man. Unverified claim isn't a reason for you to change your course.
So it almost sounds like what you're saying is that we shouldn't be using AI tools to verify its own output.
Yes, exactly right. The key takeaway is that the verification work is actual human work. And it's the same work that it's always been, which is hold a report, check the source, talk to your people. If something that you read in a chat window sends you back to one of those 3 steps, then fine, okay? But those 3 steps are the job, and skipping them is really what gets dealers into trouble. So let's talk about some practical use cases, Jeremy, and let's talk about where AI really shines and what dealers could actually be using these tools for?
Sure. Yeah. I think of AI as like a useful assistant, right? If I wanted to use that, for instance, for website content review, I could do a prompt like review my service page and identify areas that may confuse customers or reduce conversion rates. That's going to work really well because it's great at evaluating clarity in messaging. Again, it's a language model, right? It's able to interpret what's clear and what isn't. And then another one that I really like is finding more information on your competition, right? So if I did something like compare my homepage messaging to the 3 leading dealership websites nearby and identify opportunities to improve differentiation. So AI is great at summarizing and comparing content. And you get bonus points too if you can give it examples of what you're hoping to achieve as well. Third use case, I would say executive summaries are awesome, right? Getting a lot of information and boiling it down to some talking points is always helpful for presentations. AI is excellent at simplifying large data sets into actionable summaries. It is important to note that AI tools aren't fact-checking themselves, though. They're providing a response that it believes that you want to hear in the language that makes sense to you. These recommendations should not be accepted blindly, and they should also be fact-checked by a human. The fourth use case, this is one that's near and dear to my heart. I do this almost every day. I use it for opportunity discovery for keyword gaps for SEO strategies. So if I used a prompt something like, based on the attached report, what customer questions are not being currently answered on my website? And why that's going to work is it's great at identifying content opportunities. It can find gaps in your strategy based on the data that's presented. And this means that you need data on your market, which could include your competitors' FAQ pages. It could be another independent third party that provides specific reporting. And that will help determine what you do not have on your website that your competition does have. And then last but not least, I like it to tell me a little bit about the customer experience because it's great at language again. If we pretend like we're a shopper looking for a family SUV, I could say, hey, pretend you're a shopper looking for a family SUV. Review my homepage and explain what would be confusing or frustrating. And why that's going to work is AI can provide useful qualitative feedback about the user experience. It's just going to read the language on the page and it's going to make a distinction on which items could be confusing and then make recommendations on how to make the language more clear. Since it's not really analyzing the code on the page, unless you're telling it to do that, right? Since it isn't analyzing that code, it is doing what it does best in analyzing that language and giving you either a summary of it or giving you recommendations on how to make it more clear.
Wow, those are some awesome prompts and they make a lot of sense as far as like how they can be used. I think you did a great job there giving some powerful examples. I want to shift over and kind of increase the speed here. We're going to do a little game called rapid fire question and answer, okay? And it's going to be a real quick round. I'm going to start it off with asking you a question. You're going to tell me, Jeremy, if it's a bad question to ask AI or if it's a good question to ask AI. Sound good?
Let's do it.
All right, so good question or bad question. Can you explain what these analytics mean?
Oh, that's going to be in that executive summary category. That's a great question. Great use for AI.
Next one. Can you tell me my website traffic?
That's going to be a bad question. It's just a little bit too vague. You need to provide supporting documents in order to get some actual data out of that.
Can you summarize this SEO report?
Near and dear to my heart. I do that every day. Yes, that's an excellent use case for that.
How about, is my website healthier than my competitors?
Oh, that's kind of a loaded question or like a dangerous question. If you've supplied some objective data for both sites, I could see it somewhat being useful, but that's one I would probably stay away from.
I hear you on that one, definitely. So in closing, Jeremy, like if dealers could only remember one thing from our conversation, what should it be?
I would say treat AI as a powerful assistant, but not a measurement tool. Use it to like interpret data, maybe summarize the data. If you feel like something isn't quite clicking and you need some additional information, use it to gain clarity. Get it to explain itself whenever it comes up with a solution or an answer to your question that you don't quite understand. It's great at extrapolating more data to give you more context. But still, on the flip side of that, still use analytics platforms to measure everything that's coming out of the AI tool, validate what it's saying, and then verify it with an actual number. Tie that back to a report or something. And the dealerships that combine both of these strengths are going to be the ones that are going to win.
Yeah, I agree. And I think that's the key takeaway, right? Is trust the data first, then use AI to help you understand what the data measures. Thank you, everybody that's tuned in to watch our podcast. We appreciate you. And if you ever have questions, don't hesitate to reach out to us. We're here to help you. And we wish you the best of luck with using AI in your day to day operations moving forward. Take care.
Thanks, guys.